Thank you. Thank you for joining another seminar in our series, Living Your Healthiest Life, Combos on Health, Nutrition, and Fending Off Disease with Dr. Jessica Ridgely. She will present on the importance of sleep and the link it has to living your healthiest life. At the end of our presentation, we will answer your questions. During the presentation, you can type your questions into the comment feature and I'll ask them at the end. Now I'll hand it off to Dr. Ridgely. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ridgely. I work at Skyridge Primary Care in Lone Tree, and we're going to talk about sleep tonight. I termed it Off to Bed I Go, or at least we hope so. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, we're obviously talking about sleep. So why do we sleep? I know for myself, I kind of many times wish that I could just go without sleep because I have so many things I'd like to get done. But sleep is actually very important and it helps keep us doing the things that we want to do. So sadly, we cannot go without it. I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep cycles and make sure that we understand kind of how our body goes through sleep and why we need the amount of sleep that we typically need. We're also going to talk about age changes because I think as everybody who has gotten a little older has noticed that there's some changes that do happen when we sleep, and sometimes this can create other issues that we can hopefully use certain things to help us with. And then different types of sleep issues that can arise and how we can combat that. We're going to spend a little bit of time on lifestyle focus. This is a really important part of trying to get more sleep. And then we'll talk a little bit about sleep medications. I typically like to go for more natural things before we go to medications, but I think it's important to know what those medications are and how they affect you and if they have addictive potential or not. So we are going to talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, hold on. There we go. So I think many people can associate with this little meme of in the morning you want to sleep, in the afternoon you are dying to sleep, and in the night you are wide awake and cannot sleep. So hopefully you don't struggle with that, but for those of you who do, hopefully this will help. So why do we sleep? There's a lot of reasons and multiple things that can help us throughout the day. When it comes to brain health, sleeping actually helps us to clear the lymphatic waste from our brain because we've been thinking all day. And so it actually helps to kind of clear that and starts to get the toxins out. It also has an important part of converting our short-term memories to long-term memories. And many times those short-term memories don't have a lot of importance. So they kind of actually sorts through those memories and decides what we're going to keep and what we aren't, like how much importance it seemed to have in that day. It also helps to increase neuroplasticity. We used to be believed that kind of once you reached adulthood, you kind of knew everything you could know and you didn't have this change in the brain. But in the last 20 to 30 years, it's been very obvious from the scientific evidence that we have this thing that's calls that neuroplasticity, where our brain actually improves and changes and overall can get better, and it can also get worse, and sleep is a huge part of that. Also, if we don't get enough sleep, as many people know, we don't have the same focus as we typically have. And this is something that I find really interesting because I would say that many people on a regular basis do not get an appropriate amount of sleep, or at least the quality sleep that we need. And then we've talked a lot about ADHD or ADD and that lack of focus. And the question I always have when somebody brings this to me is, how well are you sleeping? And how can we improve that? Because improving that may improve the focus issues that you're having. It also is very important in weight maintenance. Sleep actually regulates the hunger hormones. So it can actually, if you don't get enough sleep, it can actually increase ghrelin and decrease leptin and make you feel more hungry. I think many people who've had that very bad night of sleep and the next day they're sitting there doing their work and they're like, oh, I'm hungry. I'm going to snack on chips and I'm going to snack on M&Ms. And I know that I have that a lot more when I don't get enough sleep. So it can definitely help with that. And it also lack of sleep increases stress hormones. And that stress hormone also increases, it tells your body that you need more food because you're in a stressful situation and you may need to, fight a tiger. I don't know. So then that happens and you might need more calories. But in reality, in this day and age, we rarely fight tigers. So it also improves emotional regulation. And there's actually been studies that have shown that sleep deprivation does cause us to have an increased reaction to situations with a negative aspect, and it decreases our positive focus. So it really does make it much more difficult for us to maintain a positive outlook when we are without a good amount of sleep. We also have improved immunity when we're asleep. Sleep actually is regulated by IL-1, which is an interleukin that is a part of the immune system. And while we're sleeping, it actually increases cytokines, which are these little chemicals that help to improve our overall ability to fight infections. So with sleep deprivation, we have decreased immunity. And it also causes inflammatory mediators, or the things that cause inflammation in our body, to increase. And one thing we do know is that inflammation kind of runs many things in our body. It can cause insulin resistance, making us more prone to um, diabetes. It can also give us issues with heart health, increases cholesterol. Also, lack of sleep increases blood pressure. Blood pressure, and it also affects how we eat, like we talked about, meaning that the stress hormones go up. It makes us eat more, and sometimes we don't feel energetic enough to go do the exercise that we want to do. And so therefore we eat too much and don't get enough exercise. So that can affect pretty much everything in the body, not just the heart, but it definitely has an effect on heart health overall. Okay, let me see here. I'm not having the easiest time moving my screen. There we go. So sleep cycles, this is really important to kind of understand how we sleep and how it progresses throughout the night and why we need the amount of sleep that we do. So we start out with our lightest sleep, which I think most people know that, and then we go into the light sleep. So the lightest sleep is kind of that time frame where it kind of feels like in your that kind of twilight zone area. And then we go into light sleep where usually we can be aroused pretty easily. After about 20 minutes, we go into what is considered deep sleep. And that deep sleep is our slow wave sleep, and it creates a lot of different things in our body. And then our next stage is REM sleep. And as you can see in this graph, that throughout the night, the light sleep does increase, and the deep sleep actually has its most at the beginning of the night and decreases as the night goes on. And then REM actually starts out with small amounts and increases as the night goes on. And many times we actually end up waking up right at the end of our last REM sleep. And both deep sleep and REM sleep are very important when it comes to how our bodies process. The deep sleep is going to help us with our rest and relax and kind of decreasing that overall fight or flight that we go through and many times throughout the day. And then the REM sleep has a lot to do with memory and memory collection. All right, so talking a little bit more about that, the deep sleep is our most relaxed phase of sleep. It is, as I said, it's longer in the beginning of the night and then shortens throughout the night. It is really important for our delta waves, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that is that more restorative sleep or brain waves that happens when we sleep. So it is our most restorative sleep when we are getting deep sleep and the slow wave sleep. It improves our insight and helps to improve our creativity and memory. It doesn't collect our memories, but it does actually help to be able to recall memories when we're awake, when we get that slow wave sleep. REM sleep, on the other hand, the brain activity picks up, and there's this thing called rapid eye movement, which is why it's called REM sleep. And that actually causes the body actually sends out signals where the body is paralyzed, and you actually have tons of activity. So you're more into those active brain waves. And it's where you have your vivid dreaming. And many times when we wake up and we remember our dream, it's because we had just woken up after a REM sleep. It does improve memory because it collects the memories and is also very important for creativity and learning. Okay, I keep having this problem. There we go. All right, let's talk about the hormones that are involved in sleep and how it starts to progress throughout the night. So this um, orange is the melatonin levels, and blue is our cortisol levels. So think of the blue as your daytime and the orange as your nighttime. And so it makes this really pretty graph that throughout the daytime it increases from early in the morning, usually around 3 a.m., and it increases up to peaking around 10 a.m. And then it starts to decline as the day goes on and hits a low point right around 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. to midnight. And in conjunction, your melatonin, normally, ideally, if our body is responding normally, will start to pick up around 6 p.m. and it starts to increase this need for us to go to sleep. It peaks around 1 to 2 in the morning and then suddenly drops off just as cortisol starts to pick up. So, cortisol is really important in our daytime awakening and keeping us functioning. It is a stress hormone and has gotten a bad rap, but it's actually really important to our body. And it is really interesting, though, when it starts to get out of sync and we have it increasing throughout the nighttime. So, if you could look at that blue wave and see that low point, that trough, and see it start to rise a little bit, obviously it's going to start to overtake the melatonin wave. And so the melatonin is not going to be as functional. So, and same thing if the melatonin doesn't have its increase normally and is decreasing the amount that it puts out, then the cortisol is still going to be able to overtake that. And it's going to impair our ability to sleep. In um, with cortisol, they did find that if somebody has insomnia without depression, so, a lot of times people who are having sleep issues do have an element of depression. But if we were to take somebody with insomnia and no depression, they found that the cortisol levels were higher in the evening time, which is like we were discussing, where that blue would start to overtake that orange. And it's associated with higher amounts of stress. So that's obviously when we are having higher amounts of stress, that's when we're going to have more of an issue with being able to sleep. And then melatonin, it is affected by blue light, and blue light is all around us all of the time. We see it in our computer screens, in our TVs. If we use blue light, like lights in our house, or like blue more than yellow, it increases that. And just having lights on in the house at night causes us to have a decrease in melatonin production. And so we'll talk a little bit about ways to improve melatonin production at night, which is really important for sleep. Um, People can dose with melatonin, it's pretty common, but your body does make it from the pituitary gland. So improving that production can be very helpful. Um, but one thing to note is that a higher dose of melatonin, around 5 milligrams, has shown to increase sleep time, giving it to yourself at night. The problem with that is some people do seem to have a little bit of a foggy feeling in the morning when they increase the higher doses of melatonin. You can do melatonin to decrease the amount of time it goes to sleep, and that would be more of your short acting. And you can also use it in the middle of the night for nighttime awakenings as well. But like I said, it's best to actually kind of support your own melatonin production as much as you can if you're having problems with sleep. The two other ones that really seem to affect sleep are GABA and growth hormone. GABA is a neurotransmitter, kind of like serotonin, dopamine. We've all heard those. GABA is kind of like the silent partner. It is what actually helps to relax the body. So we have this fight or flight system, but we also have our rest and relax. And GABA is super important in rest and relax. The thing is that cortisol will kind of drive the system if we need to, and GABA will take a backseat if it has to. So it's really important to kind of improve our GABA stores and that kind of thing. There are ways that you can eat certain things that help improve GABA, making sure you're getting enough of your proteins, and glycine is something that does produce GABA, and so does inositol. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But GABA increases the relaxant effect for sleep. So if you increase the GABA in your system, it will help to improve sleep. It helps to overall decrease the anxiety, which decreases your cortisol levels. It helps to decrease blood pressure. So that's actually something that if you do have high blood pressure and on medication and you decide to give yourself GABA for sleep, that it's actually important to kind of pay attention to your blood pressure when you do that, because it can decrease blood pressure. And it's also really important on that last one, which is the production of growth hormone. And the interesting thing about growth hormone is that growth hormone doesn't exactly affect sleep, but growth hormone is very important to so many different other aspects of our body and our life, that if we're not getting enough sleep, we're not producing enough growth hormone. And growth hormone does decrease when you get older, but it also decreases more significantly due to lack of sleep. So with growth hormone, it is mainly in that deep sleep that is produced. It is in the slow wave sleep, which is the same thing. And it does decrease a little bit with age, as the slow wave sleep does decrease a little bit. It is associated with those delta brain waves, which really helps to increase our rest and relax, and helps to decrease the anxiety overall throughout the day. It is part of the deepest relaxation and restorative sleep. And growth hormone throughout the day is super important to healthy muscle growth and production. It actually affects how our bodies collect fat, and it interacts with insulin in that way as well. It actually affects the HDL to LDL ratio in a positive fashion, and it's needed for normal brain function. So it is very important for us to get that slow wave sleep so that we can produce that growth hormone. All right. Go. All right. So what are the sleep requirements? Obviously, if you have a newborn, they seem to sleep a lot, and for good reason. Their brain's growing very fast, and they average about 16 hours per night. If you have a child who's less than a year, it's going to be between 3 to 12 months. It's going to be about 14 hours per night, and it's really important that they do get that sleep. Between 1 to 2, so your toddler years, you're looking at about 12 hours of sleep. And then around 3 to 5 years, it's around 11 hours of sleep. Between 6 to 12 years, we're around 10 hours. And then 13 to 18, although many of our teenagers seem like they sleep a ton and probably need more than 9 hours. On average, they need around 9 hours of sleep and can function pretty well on that. And then as adults, it kind of depends on 7 to 9 hours. There have been scientific studies that have shown that there are certain genetic components for some people that allow them to sleep less and still have the same results. But it is, and I've had people tell me that's just how they are. And the reality is that's so few people, that most of the people who tell me that are still being impaired by not getting that, at least that 7 hours of sleep. And when you look at, and actually this is something I didn't talk about in the sleep cycles, an average sleep cycle lasts about an hour and a half. And actually, the first sleep cycle lasts the longest. You don't start your REM sleep typically for about an hour and a half, and it starts about at that point. But if you average it out, the sleep cycles last about an hour and a half. And it's really important to complete the sleep cycle if you can. And so when you think about it, that 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5 is probably those key times when waking up would be reasonable. So when we say 8 hours of sleep, really 7.5 is typically pretty good if you've gone to sleep relatively quickly. And I used to play with this when I was in medical school, studying for tests. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to study until midnight, and then I'm going to sleep until 3, and then I'm going to get up and study some more, and then I'm going to take my test. And I have to say that when I did play around with it, that 3 or 4.5, it's not enough sleep, but most of the time, if you do get a full sleep cycle, you will feel rested. you're just going to really dive down deep after about noontime. But if you allow yourself those time frames, if you are needing to get less sleep for whatever reason, making sure you get those sleep cycles is actually very important. All right, so my next topic is power naps. And that is one of my favorite topics because I have a lot of patients that'll come into my office and they will be like, I feel like I am sleeping too much. I don't know what the problem is. I'm sleeping fine at night, but then I get tired around 2 o'clock. And I usually ask them, well, how much are you sleeping? Let's talk about this. Let's make sure you're getting enough sleep. And that's not why you're tired in the afternoon. But many times I'll find that they are sleeping okay, um, but they feel like they need a nap. And the reality is that our bodies, well, it used to be that lunch was the biggest meal of the day. And after a bigger meal, the body is going to need that rest and relaxation because our digestion actually functions off of that rest and relax. And so 1 to 2 o'clock is actually pretty normal to feel like you need sleep. And many people in our culture think that that's abnormal. But if you actually look at historical cultures as well as European cultures and even many of the Asian cultures, it is normal to expect a longer lunchtime, such as a siesta or tea time in Britain, or, French have a 2 hour lunch. I mean, here, like, we're lucky if we get 30 minutes or if we don't work through it. But the reality is that we should have a lunch and it should help us to rest and relax. But we push through and then we drink caffeine in the morning, and then that only accentuates our need and that feeling like we're tired in the afternoon, because usually caffeine hits around 2 o'clock. Or it'll kind of get out of your system around that 2 o'clock, or really be kind of hitting that low point. And a lot of us drink caffeine, so we have that feeling. And it's really important to understand that um, drinking caffeine after 2 o'clock, if you do have sleep issues, is a big no-no, because it will likely knock it out of your system, and then it will cause a lot of problems with sleeping later. So it is normal to need a power nap. And actually, some of the scientific studies have shown that if you do a power nap, it improves cognitive performance for about 120 minutes after that nap, that it decreases impulsivity and improves your ability to focus and deal with frustrations. And it actually boosts your attention level, the same level of the same amount as caffeine. So some of our more progressive companies, such as Google, actually has nap pods, which I think all of us wish our jobs had nap pods. I wish mine did. So, but they can actually be very helpful to take a power nap. And what do I mean by a power nap? I mean, if you do have the time to do an hour and a half, that's awesome. But 20 minutes of just spending in that light sleep can actually be really helpful for continuing on with your day and having that improved cognitive performance. All right. So I talked a little bit about age changes, but let's talk a little bit more about that. I think it is important to understand how our bodies change, and what happens in age. So in age, we do seem to produce a little less melatonin and growth hormone, and then it causes this decreased length of sleep. So that is one thing that can happen. We also produce less antidiuretic hormone, which typically what that would do is tell our body we don't need to go to the bathroom, even if our bladder is filling up. So then we don't have to get up in the middle of the night. But when we have less of it as we age, then we start to have this increased need to urinate at night. And the more likely we have this, the more it can wake us up, and potentially it makes it so that we can't get back to sleep. And so those are a lot of different issues that can become an issue for us as we age. We also have more of a potential for sleep apnea. And here at altitude, we have more of a potential for central sleep apnea, not just obstructive sleep apnea. So just because your spouse or partner doesn't tell you that you're snoring doesn't mean you're not having a little bit of sleep apnea. I actually do see a lot of central sleep apnea in patients that are fatigued, that we have to kind of work with. There's also a little bit more of a potential for restless leg. I didn't put restless leg syndrome because restless leg syndrome is an actual syndrome that people struggle with, and it can be that. But there is all, and it actually is associated with tremor, like an essential tremor. But we also have more of the potential for restless leg when we are having certain decreases in nourishment, which could be such as like magnesium. And we'll talk more about magnesium as well. All right. So what are our stay up all-nighters? Many people know this from their early 20s. Alcohol actually is a depressant, but it over about a 4-hour period will start to get out of the body. So if you're drinking that at night with dinner and you end around 10 and go to sleep, you're going to wake up at around 2 a.m. So that's what alcohol will make you wake up. And if you have a difficult time going back to sleep, then that's going to just make it that much more difficult. Caffeine, as we talked about, shouldn't really be drank after 2 o'clock. Some people do have more potential for going to sleep. Even with caffeine, they just process caffeine faster. But most people, for the most part, we don't. Energy drinks is the same thing. These can have things in them that, such as ephedra, ma wang, caffeine, any of those Monster or Red Bulls, they're not going to be good for you and helping you go to sleep. Nicotine definitely has an effect on sleep because it releases dopamine. Dopamine is our get up and go neurotransmitter. It is our motivation. So when you have a release of that, it makes it a little bit more difficult to go to sleep. SAMe was interesting. That is actually a really important, it's a really important amino acid that our body produces that helps us produce energy. And the reason that SAMe can cause that, it can actually help with sleep as well, but the reason it can cause problems is because it does sometimes have a problem with gastrointestinal issues, and then that would keep you up. And then any kind of weight loss supplement is going to have an upper in it. That's pretty much a given. So with that being a given, it's going to have something that's like caffeine or some of the things in the energy drinks that's not going to allow you to go to bed. Medications, we're talking about amphetamines. That includes pretty much all of our ADHD or ADD medications. Antidepressants sometimes have more of an effect that causes us to feel like sleeping. It kind of depends on how we react to that increase in serotonin. And some of them can actually decrease our ability to go to sleep too. Asthma meds, albuterol is definitely has an upper effect, and some people have a shaky feeling. So taking that right before bed can impair your ability to go to sleep quickly. Beta blockers do decrease REM sleep, so therefore it can increase a problem with sleep overall. Diuretics will just keep you up all night peeing, so usually taking those at night is not a good idea. Steroids is kind of like a cortisol in our body, and so it just kind of overrides that melatonin and doesn't allow us to sleep. And if anybody here has been on steroids, they know exactly how it feels, because I tell all of my patients who are on steroids, you're probably going to need Benadryl to go to sleep, but it will definitely keep you up. Thyroid medications, that is only if you're being over treated with thyroid medications. It typically should not cause any problems if you are in the appropriate range for your thyroid. And then some antihistamines just have an upper effect, like Claritin, also called loratadine, can have a little bit of an upper effect, and that can definitely cause more problems with staying up. Oh, hold on. We missed something. So they say if you can't sleep, it's because you are awake in somebody else's dream. Well, whoever you are, I'm going to find out and punch you in the face. I know many of us have felt that way. So I thought I would share that. How do we get more sleep? So this is, we talked about reasons why it's important to get sleep. Let's talk about why, how do we get more sleep? So the number one thing is going to be lifestyle modification. And I don't think that we can override it with medications, but overall, that is not going to be the healthiest way to approach sleeping better. So when it comes to daytime, what can you do in the daytime? You can do cognitive behavioral therapy. That has actually been found to be as effective as hypnotic medication. And I had a patient at one point who was really struggling hard to get sleep, and she was trying everything, and she felt like she was doing everything from a lifestyle modification point. And we finally had her go to therapy, and they had her start doing meditation at night. And through the cognitive behavioral therapy and meditation, it worked so much better than any medication that we tried. And she had tried almost everything. So it's really interesting to me to see that effect. And so it can really definitely work if you give it a chance. But cognitive behavioral is very important. Exercise is also very important. Exercise has been found to be as or more effective than hypnotic medication. Um, it does seem to help whether you do it at any time during the day, but for people who can't sleep, it is beneficial to do it in the evening because probably about 2 hours, like finishing around 2 hours before you go to bed, because after those 2 hours, after that 30 to 90 minutes, your body starts to decrease temperature, and that will actually signal the body to increase melatonin and have you go to sleep. But there's also benefits to exercising outdoors. So spending time outdoors was the next one, and that's super important. There have been so many studies done on quote unquote forest bathing. And what forest bathing is just basically going and walking among the trees or in a garden or something, breathing the extra oxygen. But they started this idea in Japan, and it actually has been found to significantly decrease stress hormones and decrease anxiety. And it can improve sleep from that perspective. And so reducing stress is really important, whether that is through exercise, through meditation, through spending time in forest bathing. However you want to reduce that stress is really important. And then another thing that is helpful, we talk about, scheduling for our kids and how important it is, but it is also important for us to help with that and getting up at the same time every day, even if we can't sleep very well. Because many times, if you struggle with sleep the night before, um, making sure you get up and you go through that day will help you sleep the next night. For some people, anxiety starts to get a hold of them, and that can become an issue, but that is really important to have that scheduling. And then at night, it is really important about 2 hours before bed to start decreasing the lights in your house. And if people insist on having bright lights in the house, you can sometimes put on sunglasses. I wear my sunglasses at night. We go back to the 80s. But it is actually very important to decrease that lights in your eyes, because that will help to improve your melatonin. And really important to reduce the blue light even more than the bright lights in your house. And that involves um, your computer, your phone, your tablet, and your TV. And I tell people at least an hour and a half before bed if you're having trouble sleeping to stop that. Sometimes people aren't able to, say they have to do work at night. I highly recommend getting blue light glasses, even if you don't have a problem with your vision. Just getting blue light glasses will, one, help save your vision, and two, will help you sleep even if you have to do a little bit of work at night or need to be on the computer. Turning down the thermostat is a really interesting one. They've done a lot of studies on this, and this actually shows that if you keep your thermostat between 60 to 67, it will help to decrease your own body temperature, increase melatonin production, and help you overall sleep. We talked a little bit about meditation. Um, Meditation is super important if you're struggling with sleep, because it does decrease that fight or flight that's been going on throughout the day and starts to improve that rest and relax that you need to go to sleep. Um, a couple apps that work. I mean, a lot of people know about the Calm app. There's also the Headspace app. There's also the Insight Timer. And you can use those to meditate. A really easy meditation that I give to a lot of my patients is called counted breathing, where you breathe in for 5 seconds and you count it, and you breathe out for 5 seconds and you count it. And you can increase it to 6 or 7 seconds if you want to, but it has to be a slow, persistent counting. The counting is something that your mind starts to focus on, and the breathing helps to reduce the fight or flight and helps with the rest and relax. And then where it's very hard many times to just sit and do nothing and meditate, and people are like, I didn't feel like I got anything out of that. Having something to focus on can be really helpful. So I guess counting sheep can really work if you want to try that, but just counting your breathing can help. Um, and then if you're still struggling a little bit, if you have a noisy apartment or something like that, using white noise can really help. Also, if you have tinnitus, I will tell you, if you have a ringing in your ears or something, kind of a sensation that seems to help keep you up, white noise can be very helpful. All right, so a couple different things that can go. My mind keeps going and going and going. That's when you're trying to go to sleep and you just can't. That's nighttime hits and you're exhausted and you just can't sleep. This is anxiety. This is your fight or flight. This is where we need to switch it to rest and relax, and that is the main thing that we need to do. And so the nighttime routine is paramount, turning things off, not looking at your screens. Meditation is key. And when I say meditation is key, a lot of people want this immediate kind of response. And some people can have a little bit of immediate response, but the reality is that meditation takes actually your results with meditation improve over time. So this is something that you have to commit to, kind of like an exercise routine, and 10 minutes works. So it does not have to, 20 minutes, I think, has been something that a lot of studies have been done on, but 10 minutes has been found to be effective. So it does not have to be a long period of time to do that. But it is important that you do it every single night. And then as time goes on, you will find that even your anxiety and your irritability throughout the day will improve. So you're switching off that fight or flight, you're improving that rest or relax. So when in these situations, melatonin can be helpful. If you want something to kind of help with improving sleep architecture, then the extended release melatonin can help. GABA can help, and you can get GABA to do that. And then valerian root. So GABA, I actually do have to work a lot of times at night. And so on my work nights, I will use a supplement called GABA Calm, and it has GABA in it, and it does really help to kind of just decrease kind of that overactive mind. Another one is valerian root. Valerian root in the botanical world is considered a light sedative. Everybody is different, so you need to make sure that you know how you react to this before you use it on a work night. I tried it in medical school and barely got up the next morning. And that was just a tea. I probably overbrewed the tea, but it was just a tea. And but so everybody's a little bit different when it comes to valerian root. It can be helpful with anxiety for some people throughout the day, but it can also help to kind of decrease that constant ongoing kind of mind, just persistently thinking, and help kind of put that down and help increase your rest and relax. Witching hour awakenings. So the witching hour in history is at 3 o'clock in the morning, when the spirit realm seems to be the most open. At least that was what people used to say. And the superstition is that if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that a ancestor wants to talk to you. And so I know many of us do have witching hour awakenings, and it's very frustrating, because if you can't go back to sleep and you've only had like 4 to 6 hours of sleep, you are just like already ready for the day to be really rough. So one of the possibilities, if you have persistent witching hour awakenings, is to go to sleep earlier. And that's hard for some people, but it might be something that can be helpful. The other thing is you can take an instant release melatonin. I prefer sublingual melatonin. Sublingual melatonin hits a lot faster than just taking melatonin, which you can take up to 30 minutes. And so many times when you have those witching hour awakenings, you can take a sublingual melatonin and it'll help to get you to sleep. You can take some time to meditate, and kind of just focus on something else instead of thinking about how upset you are that you're awake. And then, you can get up and be productive and hope that the next night being productive will get you better sleep the next night and you won't be awake at that same time. But those are some possibilities for that. You don't really want to take anything that's going to cause significant sedation. You could take GABA, but you don't want to take it because you're likely going to be up in 3 to 4 hours. So you just have to be careful of that, but you can take a few things, and I will give some recommendations on that. All right, let's talk a little bit about sleep. You have your REM suppressors and your REM enhancers when it comes to medications. Most things that help with sleep decrease REM. And when you decrease REM, you increase your potential for cognitive decline because you're not able to get that memory enhancement that you need throughout the night. So some non-addictive medications is Benadryl, doxepin, which is Unisom, and trazodone. Um, and, you know, I think that these are great as needed from time to time, especially with changing, you know, your time, your, your time zone. But, it's preferable not to use them all the time. Same thing with your hypnotics, which are addictive, your Ambien, Lunesta, Sonata, and the benzodiazepines. Any of those are going to be addictive, and the more you take them, the less you're able to go off of them to be able to sleep. Some of the new medications that do help with sleep architecture and can help increase REM is Balsamra and Quviviq, which is a really weird name, but it's definitely creative. Both of those do help to increase sleep architecture and improve your overall sleep cycles. Balsamra has not been found to increase sleep time, but Quviviq has, and actually been found that if taken consistently, that it can increase sleep time between 1 to 2 hours if needed. And the only thing is that the addictive potential of Balsamra and Quviviq are kind of up in the air. It's really hard to say whether people are just really sleepy and they take it every night because they need it, or it's actually addictive. But those are medications that can be helpful in sleep. Like I said, the REM enhancers, I think, can be very helpful to really start to reinitiate sleep, and then try to come off of them and maintain that sleep. The REM suppressors are one of those that I would say use sparingly, but if it's really needed, then it's needed. All right. Oops, sorry. Okay. So what are some natural things that you can use to help with your sleep? Chamomile is probably my favorite one from that perspective. Chamomile has been used from a natural means, and like naturopathic doctors like it a lot. It can be used from everything from hay fever, inflammation, muscle spasm, menstrual disorders, ulcers, wounds, GI disorders, musculoskeletal pain, hemorrhoids. You can use them as salves. Chamomile is very interesting. And honestly, I think it's a really good one to look up because I think most people know the name of chamomile, and we think about the sleepy time tea from Celestial Seasonings as like, yeah, sure, it's going to help it. But it is actually a light sedative. And it has something in it called apigen, which binds to the benzodiazepine receptors. But the interesting thing about chamomile is it's not addictive. So it can be something that can really help with sleep and can actually be put with other things to help with sleep as well. And it's really nice as a tea. You can use it at night with your bedtime routine. And I think a lot of people who do try this find it to be very helpful. There's also tryptophan. Tryptophan is something that we think about with turkeys. Reason we get sleepy after a big meal at Thanksgiving. You can take 1 gram 45 minutes before bed, and it will help decrease the amount of time it takes to sleep. And this is in mild to moderate, not severe insomnia, but mild to moderate can, if you're having that mind going, you can try this and it should help. 5-HTP is another amino acid. That is something that is the precursor to serotonin. You can take 200 to 400 milligrams at night, and it can help to decrease sleep latency and to improve sleep quality. It needs to be taken for around 8 weeks to get significant effect. So this is something that's a little bit more something you should have to just kind of continue taking. Melatonin has been found for many people to be helpful. Like I said, some people find themselves with too much to get a little bit foggy. Most studies have said that the difference between what somebody can take can be anywhere from 1 milligram all the way up to 20 milligrams. A lot of times with patients who are undergoing cancer and have difficulties with sleep, they recommend 20 milligrams. The amount it does improve sleep quality. That has been found, but the ability to improve the length of sleep has been somewhat inconclusive. It can improve jet lag. It can help with sleep disorders in children. And it can also help with delayed sleep or anxiety when you're dealing with surgery. And so those have been found to be true, and it can help with the sleep quality because it does improve your overall architecture. We talked a little bit about GABA. You can supplement GABA, and it does provide some emotional and behavioral support for the over anxiety, decreasing excitability, promoting calmness and relaxation, and improving focus. That is something that you can use in the middle of the night for the twitching hour awakenings as well. Inositol is very interesting. It helps to improve GABA production. So you can take GABA or you could take inositol and help to improve GABA production. And with that, it does improve sleep quality and it can improve the length of sleep. The study that I found was in pregnant women, but I'm not really sure why that would matter, whether it's pregnant or non-pregnant. I think that inositol is something that we need and it can be helpful regardless. And that's about 1 gram nightly. Glycine is another one this actually increases REM sleep and decreases REM latency. So super important if you're for some people who feel like they sleep, but they wake up feeling groggy, they may not be getting enough REM sleep. And you can try glycine. It helps to reduce your core body temperature, which is really important in going to sleep, and it helps to produce serotonin production. And you can take anywhere from 3 to 5 grams before bed of glycine. Magnesium is one of my absolute all-time favorite supplements. It increases sleep time and increases sleep efficiency. It also decreases sleep latency and it decreases cortisol because magnesium is the relaxant to your body. It relaxes your nerves, it relaxes your muscles, it helps to decrease anxiety, it helps relax your bowels. I mean, it just relaxes everything. And so a lot of times I will recommend magnesium glycinate. So there we have that glycine component as well at around 400 to 600 milligrams at night, and that can be really helpful. And then a couple essential oils that can be helpful is lavender. Lavender helps to improve sleep quality and it helps you wake up feeling refreshed, but it does not improve the quantity of sleep that you have. And then inhalation of bitter orange, 5 minutes twice daily, helps to increase and improve sleep in postmenopausal women. I'm not really sure why this scientific study was done in postmenopausal women, but I would assume that it probably helped for most people as well. So that's an option. All right. And so this is kind of the end of the presentation, but when we're putting it all together, lifestyle modification is the most important thing and the number one thing you really need to think about if you're struggling with sleep. Some of those other things can be helpful, but the lifestyle and decreasing those lights is very important. You always want to try the natural stuff first. It's going to have less side effects and it is also not going to be as much of an issue with getting addicted to it. And then medication is as needed, obviously through your doctor. So don't give up on your dreams, keep sleeping. There's actually a story that everybody knew not to wake up Einstein for that power nap between like 1 and 2 in the afternoon. So maybe we should take a little thing from Einstein and start getting those power naps. All right, so I will take any questions at this time.
Thank you so much. That was so thorough. We had a lot of questions come in, but you also answered a lot of them. So if any of these are repetitive, maybe you can just expand a little.
Okay.
So first question, you mentioned inflammation impacts sleep. Can reducing this in my body help me sleep better?
So it's not so much that inflammation impacts sleep. It's more that not getting enough sleep or sleep deprivation impacts inflammation. So if you increase your sleep and improve that sleep quality, then you're going to improve inflammation in your body.
Perfect. Thank you. As a new parent, can a new parent break up their sleep cycle and still hit all the important marks of continuous sleep?
Yes, and that's where the sleep cycle is that 1.5 hours time, sleep time frame, especially with that new baby. They sleep 14 to 16 hours a day. So the saying used to be sleep when they sleep. I was not good at following that recommendation, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, but I will say every mother should do this. And father, if the father is the one taking primary care of the baby, is to get that sleep as much as they can throughout the day. They don't have to sleep every single time, but making sure that they get that 1.5 hours of sleep can be helpful.
Nice. Thank you. Talking a little bit about some of the sleep aids. How does cannabis work as a sleep aid, and does it affect your quality of sleep?
That is a really good question. I didn't look a lot into cannabis, to be honest. So CBD helps to increase relaxation. It decreases anxiety, and it overall has a relaxant effect to the body. So therefore, I would assume that it does have some effect on GABA, because when we go into that rest and relax phase in our body, GABA is more likely to be produced and to be provided to the body. But I don't know that specifically.
Okay, thank you. What should I look for when shopping for GABA Calm?
So GABA Calm is actually from Source Naturals, which is a really good it's a really good supplement. I really like Source Naturals for their sleep products. I use a lot of them. Um, there is GABA Calm, which is one of my favorites, and I've actually given that to a lot of people who are going through stressful periods of time, just for anxiety, because it does not induce sleep and is not a sedative, but it will help to decrease the anxiety, and will help to increase GABA in the body. And you can actually take higher doses that are in it. You can take a couple at a time of the GABA Calm. They also have a couple others like NutraSleep, that's also a really good one that has GABA in it. But that's also has other botanicals in it that are going to be more sedative quality. So you have to be very careful. Like, I have tried NutraSleep, and it's too much for me. But then I have some people and patients I've had try it and they loved it. And that also has GABA in it.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. There are different colors of noise. Is white noise the best recommendation for sleep, or does it matter?
So white noise is kind of just the term of something that kind of fills up the room. It could be white noise is something that's just kind of utilized as the name. Any kind of noise, any like nature sounds can be helpful. That white noise is that kind of staticky noise. It does not have to be staticky noise. My preference was rainforest sounds. Some people like wave sounds. Anything that is relaxing to that particular person, not at a high decibel, but kind of at a low decibel where you can just hear it, can be really helpful.
Right. We talked a little bit about sunlight. So can the lack of exposure to sunlight throughout the day make it harder to sleep, or can getting more exposure to sunlight throughout the day help you sleep?
So getting more exposure to sunlight can help you to sleep because it creates that dynamic in between the cortisol and the melatonin. And then when the lights go out outside, it's better to start having the lights go out on the inside. I don't know specifically the science behind whether like somebody living in Alaska would have more difficulty sleeping. Honestly, you still have a circadian rhythm that is going to drive cortisol to be higher during the day and melatonin to be higher during the night. So you still have that. It just may not be as aggressive, and it can be turned off, just like people who are night workers. A lot of times what happens is their cortisol levels get shifted. And then when they start to work a normal job, they have problems with sleep because their cortisol is high at that 10 o'clock time frame because they've been working it for so long. And I actually have a patient who we've been working for better part of a year trying to switch the cortisol back to a normal daytime so that he has his higher melatonin at night. And it's working. It just takes some time to switch it back, just like it took time for it to switch to that. So I think it has more to do with if people are maintaining that circadian rhythm at through a normal time period. But for areas that don't have as much sunlight, there's a lot more seasonal affective disorder. And if you do have an issue where you're in a place that has less light, sun lamps can be super helpful to, which are these ones that they start out at a low amount and they increase to a really bright light in 30 minutes. And that can actually signal your body to put out cortisol, and it can keep you in that normal rhythm.
Oh, great. Thank you. And what about red light bulbs? Should we put those in at night?
So like the LED lights that can change colors, red light actually does have healing qualities. The frequency has healing qualities. And what's interesting about red light is that it actually does signal the brain to have less aggression. So for people with anger issues and schizophrenia, they actually used to put rose-colored glasses on them because that having that red tint actually decreased the aggressive kind of feelings that they were having, that frustration. So red light could be helpful. But I think more than anything, just dimming the light so that there's only like a lamp on so you can see where you're going, staying away from anything that puts out blue light during that time is probably the most important.
Thank you. Okay, and maybe just time for one last question. Do weighted blankets help you sleep?
So weighted blankets are something that is used a lot in anxiety and can help to switch off that feeling of being enclosed and kind of comforted, switches off that fight or flight and increases rest and relax. I don't think it's so much increases, say, the hormones such as GABA and all of that, that increases it. But if you're increasing that rest and relax in your system, it will likely help with sleep. But I think that is more from like people who do have higher anxiety and have a more of a difficult time switching that fight or flight off.
Okay, thank you. This was another wonderful presentation, and we'll be back in a couple months. Thank you, Dr. Ridgely. And to connect with Dr. Ridgely, you can visit Skyridge Primary Care at healthonefphysiciangroup.com, or you can call 720-792-5200. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you get good sleep tonight.